Hello, Bespoken Spirits team. My colleagues and I are here today to discuss with you our recommendation for the future of your company. I'm here today with our experts, Ashley Cicero, Riley Perkins, Nicole Cashew, Gabrielle Sang, and Jesus Sanchez. And together we make RJ Sang. Now to start, I want to ask that you imagine yourself on a mountain with a cold glass of whiskey. Now you might think to yourself, what makes a great glass of whiskey? Well, we've come up with our research, as well as some personal research, is that it comes down to the ingredients, the time it's spent aged, the price, and the location of where it was made. But beyond how great the Beyond Whiskey product is, my colleagues and I believe that we have come up with a great recommendation on how your company should proceed moving forward. Now, while researching your company, we weighed the pros and cons of the different options that you have. The first option being taking your great product and moving forward into becoming a global company. The second option being taking your technology and creating a service business using this technology. In today's presentation, we will be discussing our evaluation, the analysis, the alternatives, as well as stated before, the recommendation. And now I'll pass it along to Ashley.
To get us kicked off here, we need to determine the scope of analysis. So in order to do that, we need to understand the alcohol industry at a very high level. We need to understand what that market share looks like and who are the competitors. So at a high level, our key segments are beer, wine, and spirits. And for our top level management team, I want you to think about this and just imagine for a second that across the globe, we drink 446 billion liters of alcohol each year. So that's a lot of alcohol. But what does that mean in terms of dollars? I can tell you on my next slide. So for the industry market share on a global level, the alcoholic beverage industry is worth $1.5 trillion. The spirit industry specifically is worth $407 billion. So we're not talking about chump change here. We're talking about trillions and billions of dollars. If you look here to the right-hand side, you can see the way that the market share breaks down. And you can see that beer, for example, has been on the decline since 2000. And liquor, on the other hand, has seen a increase over the last decade. So is Bespoken in the right industry? Our team would say yes, it is. Next slide, please. So now that we spoke about alcohol at a high level, we're going to take it down one notch and speak about whiskey on a smaller level. So the whiskey industry can be divided into three segments. We have our producers and distillers. These are the guys that are actually making the whiskey itself. Once they have an end product, they send that to distributors, who then send it to retailers, who then sell that to the end customer. So as Stephen had mentioned in the very beginning, we have three business models that we can use. The first one being a product-based, which would go through each of the three segments. The second one would be a technology where it focuses on the business customer. So it would be focusing on the distiller or the retailer. A third business model would be a combination of everything. Next slide, please. So next we're going to discuss the industry competitors. And as mentioned on the last slide, this is a very fragmented market. So what does that mean exactly? It means that a few of the competitors have a lion's share of the market. So if you look here to the right, we have Bespoken Spirits, and they would be competing in this competitive landscape. So now I'm going to pass this on to Gabrielle, and she's going to discuss the next slide.
All right, so one thing that we took a look at when we were looking at your product and your technology that we really enjoyed was you're currently in this really cool area of being niched in both product and in technology. And something that we really liked and in looking at what Aaron was mentioning, your founder, is that he wants to have this brand really protect the business. So something that's really cool here, and this is a chart that shows that red and blue ocean market, is that Bespoken Spirits is at a cool opportunity place right now where you're doing great production of your product with how you have this technology aspect in overturning a lot of cool product. But what we really think there's an opportunity here is you can really uptick those sales and end up in this awesome place where these competitors lie. So Ashley just pulled up this really cool chart here with all these competitors. There's a question mark up there on where Bespoken Spirits can be, and we want to help answer that question with some of these recommendations. But the real question is how, right? So something we were thinking about here is this is something that's called a competitive scope and strategic positioning chart. It tells you how to really get to that point with focusing on differentiating your strategy with either that product or technology, and we'll get to the answers on that soon. And then the other aspect we have here is we know your company is built with corporate strategy, business strategy, functional strategy. Corporate, we already think we've answered. You know what your product is. Business is a little bit of that how, which we want to help answer for you with a couple of analyses. You're going to hear some things like pestle, forces, and other cool facts like that, which will help explain how we came to that decision for you. And the functional is the operational piece, which we trust you already know. So that's the other thing is ultimately from an opportunity standpoint that we see and we want to help you answer is and help emphasize here is just focusing on that business strategy, right? And then helping you answer and really get that gray bar that you saw earlier more solid with those question marks, right? So if we go to the next piece, we've outlined these opportunities for you and we want to help you get there. Focusing on that business strategy for you with whether you want to go to the technology versus product, we have a pretty good recommendation for you there. But I think once you do that, you end up influencing your industry presence, right? Getting that green bubble you saw earlier into the realm of those competitors and ultimately getting those question marks into a really tangible number. And then that is where you'll end up increasing those revenue streams. So Riley here has our recommendation plan for you and some cool numbers.
So far my teammates have really examined the market, where Bespoken is and where it can go or potentially go as we move forward. So based on that, our recommendation is that your company continues to focus on the ACT system that you've developed to produce the whiskey and work with other industry partners and not focus so much on the retail. The technology you have developed allows you to go from being a focused differentiator that you are now to being a broad differentiator through tactical usage of strategic partnerships across the alcohol industry. As Ashley noted earlier, the industry is huge and we don't want to get lost in just one segment when we can open ourselves to the entire possibility that exists. At that same time, we can also work with partners that have the same goals, ethical guidelines that we have. An environmental portion is a big significance to Bespoken, cutting down on wasted water and limited amount of wood. So now we're going to transition and see, is this financially possible? So we ran a couple of pro formas and the detailed analysis can be found in the back. But at a high level, based on taking out no debt and a few additional investors, especially for the retail, you do see significant growth. And while the retail is about 6 times higher than the technology, there's a lot of risk that comes with that retail, which gets lost when you go to technology. And so while the revenue may seem impressive, the risk and cost of growing, expanding, marketing really outweighs that big revenue number. And we think that focusing on the technology revenue, that even though it's smaller, it has a lot more opportunity for continued growth. You can set your own prices. You don't have to be set by the market. And really this profit number here, while we still think it's very impressive, this could easily triple based on the pricing adjustments that could take place. So as we continue to go forward, we're going to look at some additional analysis which support further our recommendation. And I'm going to hand it off to Stephen here, who's going to continue.
All right, so now we will look at our competitor analysis with regards to their products. As you can see, the entire market is increasing with regards to the product type, whether it's Irish whiskey, Scotch, Japanese, American, or Canadian whiskey. In our research, we found that there are four main points of differentiation amongst the different brands, and that would be the ingredients, the time that it's spent aging, the location of where it's made, as well as the price. Now, with regards to the ingredients, amongst your competitors, there hasn't really been much change over the past 300 years. It's really just taken a mix of grains such as corn, rye, or barley, and then just doing the distilling process. With regards to the time spent aging in barrels, that's where we really start to begin to see the differences amongst the competitors. You see times from as low as 2 to 3 years all the way to 50 years. Given this lengthy aging process, your competitors have had an extremely difficult time with creating new products and specific specific taste preferences. And because of that, customers have been noticed to say that they have been drinking their father's whiskey. Regarding the price and the financial analysis for your competitors, there's also a wide range there as well. You'll see products as low as $10 per bottle, and then on the higher end, you'll see all the way up to $27,000 per bottle. Our research also showed that the cost of the typical 53-gallon barrel ranges from $300 all the way up to $700. This process presents a number of financial challenges. The first one being that it takes a very long time. And because how long it takes to not only make the product, but how long it also takes to receive the money, because the revenue is not received right away, there are several years where there is an operational negative cash flow being seen. Additionally, a new producer will likely see negative cash flow for the first several years, and in order to offset these losses, they will have to increase their prices by around $3 to $5 per bottle. A second financial challenge that we see for your competitors with regards to the price is the fact that the product is disappearing over time and by being absorbed by the barrels. We've seen that you can expect to lose as much as 20% in 1 year and all the way up to 50% over 20 years, therefore dramatically affecting the bottom line. So now I'll go ahead and pass it to Jesus.
Now, shifting gears to the technology side, let's take a look at the competitive landscape and what Bespoken ACT activation technology has to compete with on this side of the business model. So first, we have four options here, four competitors that we're going to highlight. The first one is Cutwater Spirits, who has high sensor tracking and adjustment in production. Next, we have Sonic Prep, who emphasizes on sound waves and high costs. And then we also have Time & Oak, who is a whiskey-based technology company as well that focuses on whiskey elements that makes cheap whiskey taste expensive. And lastly, we have Cleveland Whiskey, who focuses on pressurized production and weekly batches. So there are two whiskey technologies out there currently that Bespoken has to compete with. So let's take a look at how that fares with the Porter's forces. So as you can see here, we have retail and tech highlighted, retail orange, tech black, and we're gonna go and highlight a couple of these forces to see what makes sense for Bespoken. So first, we're gonna go over rivalry existing amongst competitors. So let's start with the retail side here. So although it is dominated by three firms, the whiskey market, they only hold about 12% of whiskey production and whiskey sales. So that means that there is a lot of competition there, very, very congested, very, squeezed, and Bespoken has to come out with an insane product to take away market share. And on the tech side, it's listed as moderate, and that is because although there is tech in the whiskey industry, like the two we mentioned in the previous slide, there is still some opportunities to grow. So we didn't view it as strong as it would be on the retail side. And then the next one we're gonna go over really quick is down here. So you can see under threat of substitutes, products or services, we have two on the opposite side of the spectrum. For retail, we listed it as strong. And why is that? And well, that is because whiskey isn't the only liquor of choice. There's tequila, there's gin, there's vodka, there's beer. There's a lot of there's a lot of places people can go get and shift gears to different types of liquors and enjoy their time that way. So it's easy for them to find an alternative to whiskey, which makes it very, very strong and very difficult to maneuver. And on the tech side, we listed it as weak. And why is that? It is because, as mentioned previously, there isn't a whole lot of whiskey technology out there currently that is very strong and very credited. So there's a lot of opportunity here to grow for Bespoken and the activation ACT technology. And the last one here that I'm going to highlight is bargaining power suppliers. So on the retail side, we listed it as moderate, and on the tech side, we listed it as weak. So moderate for the suppliers is because it is dominated by 3 firms primarily, but yet, as mentioned in previous slides, it is fragmented. So there is some areas of opportunity, which is why we didn't list it as strong. And for weak, it is because in this instance, our technology with Bespoken, or your technology with Bespoken, would be very, very valuable, and there will always be customers willing to take on your technology and enhance their products. So there's a lot of room to grow. And then before I move on here, bargaining power of buyers, we listed it as moderate retail, and then strong for tech, and complements, we listed it as moderate and moderate for both. All this being said is, by looking at these forces, it's safe to say that the technology side has a lot of room to grow. And that is why the forces dictate that the technology side and the ACT is the way to go. So what happens with the perceptions of technology? So let's say we do go through a technology. What are some perceptions? What will be some pushback? And these are all, in my opinion, false. They all can be adjusted to, or spoken for. But one of which, they say they specialize support in large space. The next one would be advanced technology is expensive. The whiskey industry is hesitant to quick manufacturing, and it's also considered cheap and flavor stick solutions. And the last one here is continuous high quality product. So next, we'll talk about.
All right, so one analysis we did as well is something called the PESTLE analysis. It takes a look at these different environments that affect your company. And so you see this really pretty chart takes into these different 6 factors here. And one thing that we noticed is the social and technological factors are really what's going to help your company the most. Something I was looking into earlier here was the medals that you've won in March of 2020, as we're just kind of exiting COVID as well from the context here. And I think that's just that social awareness, right? I've put in a couple of examples here to just show you where these environments really affect your company today and how it can kind of drive the business. Technology, Jesus just touched upon. While we know the pros and cons, the perceptions here, I still think that activation technology from a recommendation standpoint can really carve out that high need, right? Not a lot is happening too much in this industry from a technology aspect, and can really help create that high impact from a PESTLE standpoint. From a social standpoint too, I know the founders also, right? We want to really cater to this millennial aspect. We like new things, we like quality, we want to make sure the brand integrity is still there too, and make sure there's a social awareness. So there's a lot of attitudes in the socially towards product quality and also innovation. And so social and technology go hand in hand where they can really help the company. I think one thing from an environmental aspect is water conservation. It's a low impact here, but I think there's a lot of promise where if we were to incorporate some more, this could easily then push out to create some high impact there. So that's just one thing on how the PESTLE analysis is a factor that we took in to help further support the recommendation for technology.
All right. So based on our internal analysis, there are really 4 key attributes that set Bespoken apart from the rest. And that is their patented technology, sustainable mission, innovative products and design, and their unique customer experience. And so really, if you look across the board, all of these attributes are both valuable and rare. And so for a moment, we're just going to focus on the top 3 here. And so if we think about the top 3 attributes here, these things are, There's no other firm that can really produce whiskey with the same quality, taste, and speed as with also being environmentally conscious as your guys' firm. And so really, this puts you at a competitive advantage, although it is temporary because although these things are all very valuable and rare, they're not necessarily inimitable. And so we do have a time frame that we need to really capitalize on that competitive advantage. And really, our recommendation is going to be focused on how we can bring together your business strategy in order to exploit all of these attributes. And so in summary, based on our analysis, there's really three main takeaways. The strong rivalry within the industry tells us that in order to really make a big impact, we need to really pay attention to if we get into production. And so we need to make sure there's an aggressive strategy to make us competitive against those larger firms. And number two, traditionally speaking, there's been some hesitancy within the industry around technology. And so if we are going to go, no matter the technology or the product route, we need to make sure that there's a very targeted approach to get the great product in front of the customers and in their hands so that they can kind of make that decision on their own. And then the third one is, really the advanced aging system that you guys have created is truly innovative, and so in order to really take full advantage of kind of getting that at a larger scale, we want to make sure that we can get it with as many firms and partner with those larger firms so we can take advantage of that competitive advantage.
So let's say you all don't want to take your ACT technology into whiskey. What are some alternatives? Where else can we go? So first, let's highlight tequila, because why not? Tequila is actually one of the fastest growing categories in the liquor space. They've had 235% volume increase since 2003, and they are currently the second largest category behind vodka. So as you can see here, the trends, it is absurd. So there's a lot of opportunity here. The reason why that's the case is because Gen Z and millennials are more open to trying new things, and one of those things was they became enamored with tequila. Tequila has been the main force of why these numbers are shifting the way they are. They're moving away from other categories, so this is a very big category with a lot of potential. And lastly, the activation technology, which speed up the process in producing tequila. So this does seem like a very favorable category to get into if we decide not to go into whiskey, but there's also some cons to making this kind of transition. So some of the cons would be resources. So most tequila and the best tequila is made in Mexico. They are the ones that are known for their agave plants, and they're known for their production, and everyone does want to go into Mexico. So if you want to produce tequila, you have to bring those resources in from Mexico or produce it in Mexico and kind of have it here. So that's a whole resources aspect if that's what somebody Bespoken wants to go down to. And also with agave is a lack of expertise. So as mentioned, tequila primarily uses the blue agave plants. Whiskey is primarily made with grains. So I'm not sure if Bespoken or you all are familiar with the differences and the nuances of the different products. So that's also a barrier. And the last two things are tequila is not flavored as whiskey. Two completely different flavors. So we're talking about a severe change in our taste buds and things of that nature. And the last is marketing costs, which is knowing that it is the second largest category and the biggest growth category, that Bespoken would have to keep up with the competitors in a very evolving and accelerated pace. And so now we're going to talk about another alternative, which is wine.
Yeah, so one thing we took a look at with alternatives was the rising and declining markets of other industries. And the wine segment is one of those where there's definitely variety, where we knew you could definitely have an advantage with this technology. Wine is created in barrels, and we wanted to make sure that there was an advantage there, right? There would be an increased environmental footprint in the aspect that you could recycle the barrels that you're using with whiskey and use them towards wine, right? We felt that that could be a cool thing. But one thing I want to definitely put your attention towards are these orange data points that you'll see in this chart that's taken from the 2019 US Wine Report. What it does is it shows the varieties of grapes and how the growth has declined over the year. And it's really just because of the direct to consumer sales, but also the share of the market, right? Consumers are they're picky. They like the wine, they choose certain types of wine. And so one aspect and thought we had was applying that activation technology. Can you imagine how you could give this variety to consumers towards that grape variety and just, tease a little bit of the options they had towards these wines. The other thing we thought of was faster product output, right? Wine is known to be more profitable because of the age, but can you imagine if you were to shorten that time and still produce the same quality? So we felt that could provide a great competitive advantage and give you that quality product differentiation. Of course, there are cons to everything, and so Ashley's going to take some of those cons and show them to you.
Okay, so Gabrielle had some very good points on the pro side. Both every pro, there are some cons. So the biggest con is that the main consumer segment of wine is age 65 and over, and within the next 10 years, those people are going to start to phase out. And as Jesus had mentioned, the new generation of millennials are going to phase in. So with that being said, and the rise of spirits increasing, this would be one of the biggest cons to entering into the wine segment.
All right, so alternative number 3 is to partner with some larger firms. And so one of the main benefits to doing this is that it would really allow Bespoken to increase the scope and the positive impact that they're able to make on the environment by really just widening their reach. And second, this really, in the wine or in the whiskey industry, there are some big leaders that we see over here on the right-hand side. And they're really known for acquiring smaller firms to differentiate their brand. And so this is something that's really realistic and attainable for the organization. On the other hand, there are also some cons with partnering with the larger firms, and one of them being that it would make it potentially a little bit more difficult to really protect the rights and innovative processes behind, all of the innovative things that Bespoken is doing. It does put a little bit of the pricing power in the hands of the larger firms. And lastly, depending on some of the contractual limitations, it could result in a lack of control or a loss of control. And as you can see, there are many ways that Bespoken can really maximize their potential using the ACT system, and whether it be partnering with larger firms within the whiskey industry or moving into tequila or wine, there's really a number of alternatives that we can take.
All right, so we get back to the initial recommendation of focusing on the ACT technology. The technology you developed at Bespoken is absolutely thrilling. The idea that you can take a process that it used to be years and years and depended on certain types of water in certain regions of the world with roasting barrels at the appropriate time and turning it into a process that could be completed in a week or two and still create results at that high level speaks to the technology. And as my teammates have demonstrated, there's a lot of other usages for the technology from wine to tequila, and that is why we truly feel you shouldn't miss out on the opportunity to partner with other firms across the alcohol industry, which continues to grow. So when you look at the value of truly going with the ACT technology, there's 4 that really jump out. As I just mentioned, the first is the speed. Progressing through that maturing process a lot quicker helps get products to shelves and avoids those stockouts. When it comes to the environment, we lose a lot when it comes to angel shares and just one usage of barrels. And so by using small micro staves and water that doesn't evaporate out of your tanks, you'll begin to see a greater impact throughout all the alcohol industry. What I think is most important is the flexibility that the technology has, not only when it comes to production, but also just adjusting to the industry. Your technology is very new and still is yet to be regulated. As we continue to go forward, it is expected big government will, of course, begin to want to control a little bit more of your process. So continuing to refine and advance will allow you to adjust to what's coming down the line. And finally, your products are dependable when you use the technology. And if that dependability is in whiskey, one of the oldest alcohol beverages out there, there's no reason to suspect it wouldn't thrive across all other alcohol segments. So now you have this great technology. Where do we go from here? So as we mentioned in the earlier phases, we really tried to keep out additional debt or need for funding, and we're really focusing on how do we get you to the $1 billion valuation as quickly as possible. So at first we recommend that you acquire 16 new systems by the end of 2023. Once you have those systems, you'll be able to go out to the market, work with industry partners, and prove the quality can be applied from beer to tequila. And as you continue to work with those partners, we expect that you'll see over $9 million in revenue by the end of 2024, which is really exciting to see that advancement. And it will also allow you to continue to grow, refine, advance, and buy new systems, which by 2026 we think you need to have 40 of. As you continue into the late 2020s, the continued brand recognition and name will really advance the technology even further. Industries will wonder, how can we take mead and incorporate it into this system? As the industry expands, your technology has the ability to continue to grow with it. And so with that, we expect by the late 2020s, the industry will realize how pivotal and industry changing your technology is, and will achieve a valuation of over $1 billion. So with that, we want to thank you for consideration of our recommendation. It has been a pleasure advising you over the last half an hour or so. We look forward to taking any questions on clarity on items we discussed, and look forward to maintaining a wonderful relation going forward. Thank you.